But the bottom line is day-to-day transactions will be entered either with the bank feeds, which that's going to be up here, the transactions. So now you have your bank feeds. So if you have your bank feeds turned on, this is where you're going to have the information pull in from the bank. And if you don't have to track accounts receivable, if you don't have to deal with inventory, if you don't have to track accounts payable, if you don't have to deal with payroll, then those types of transactions might be able to be more automated easily over here, although it still takes work to do the setup process, which we'll talk about in a future part of the course. But you can enter these items basically here. If you do have to track the receivables, that's when you go into the customer center, which is now called the sales area. If you do have to track payable, that's when you go into vendor center, which is now the expenses area. If you do have to deal with payroll and you're doing it within QuickBooks, that's when you could go to the payroll area. How does that affect the bank feeds, you might ask? Well, if I have to do it on an accrual system, the bank feeds will no longer be the item that will be recording the transaction typically, but rather I still pull the information in from the bank to double check that what I have entered ties to the bank. We call that reconciling, the bank reconciliation, whether you build your entire books from QuickBooks or you have accrual components, is going to be the most important internal control besides the double entry accounting system itself. In other words, even if you're a sole proprietor, if you just enter your data into QuickBooks, you have increased the legitimacy or the likelihood that your data is accurate a lot, like a huge amount, right? And if you also do the bank reconciliations, then again, that's a huge increase in terms of the likelihood that your data is properly formatted. There still could be timing differences and problems and whatnot, but those are huge internal controls to have a more accurate financial statement. And so we'll talk about the bank reconciliations later. So as of now, the general idea is the day-to-day input could be done with the bank automatically, and then with the data forms, which are broken out by cycle, vendor, customer, which would be sales cycle, expenses cycle, and payroll, and then to actually communicate with vendors, customers, and employees if you need to, given the fact that you have an accrual component and therefore have to. That's when you go into the centers, the sales center, the expenses center, and the payroll center.